Hi, and welcome to Two CPAs in the Mic, the podcast where we talk tax, finance, and all things related to business. Whether you're a business owner, working professional, or someone who wants to start a career in accounting, this is the podcast for you. Hosted by CCK Strategies partners Jeff Frable and Sara, we dive into relevant business and tax matters with working professionals to make these topics less intimidating, relatable, and dare we say fun? Let's get down to business.
Welcome to this week's episode of Two CPAs and the Mic. We're so glad you joined us. We're here to discuss relevant business and tax topics and apply straight talk, maybe some unexpected humor, and practical information without all the jargon and stuffiness that generally goes on with our industry. Again, my name is Jeff Frable. I'm a partner at CCK Strategies. My co-host, Sara. Hi, Sara. What's going on?
Hey, Frable. What's going on?
It seems like forever since we've actually recorded one of these, and I feel a little out of sorts.
Yes, I know, but we got it.
It's like riding a bicycle, right?
Yes, we're just going to hop right back on.
Here we go.
And keep going.
Now, one thing that's interesting about today is we have actually two people on the mic today.
I know.
But one of them is not our normal KP. She's not here today.
She's not here today. I know, but you know what? It's fine. We can do this without her.
We need to expand the budget and have 5 mics instead of 4.
Yes.
So, but we do have 2 special guests today. We are going to be talking about the Oklahoma Accountancy Board. Now, if you are an entrepreneurial business owner or someone that's not in the profession and you're lacing up your shoes to go on a run or a walk and listen to this and think this is not going to apply to you, you still need to stay on because we're going to find ways to apply this to your situation. If you're in any kind of profession that does have a licensing overboard or oversight, it might be good for you to hear what goes on behind the scenes with those kind of organizations. And if you're in the profession, it'd be good to hear. Just because we're talking about the Oklahoma Accountancy Board doesn't mean that this isn't what goes on in other states as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But we do have 2 very special guests today.
We do. We've got Ashley Plyushko. She's the executive director for the Oklahoma Accountancy Board. And then we have our very own founding partner, John Curzon, with us. He actually is serving as vice chair on the Oklahoma Accountancy Board. You guys, welcome.
Well, good to be here. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Well, why don't you guys give us a little brief introduction about yourselves? We'll start with ladies first. Okay, John. So Ashley, take it away.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. So I've been the executive director for almost 3 years now. I am a CPA. I am a government person at heart. I've been in government since I started my career when I was 21. It has been a dream job for me. I have enjoyed every moment. And every time I think, I'm going to get tired of it, I never do. It gets more and more fun.
Nice. Wow. I mean,
she's got some energy.
Yeah, she does, especially when you're talking about an accountancy board. This is great.
We will induct her into the non-stereotype CPA class there.
Yes.
That works.
Yes, it's great. All right, John.
And that's why I brought her.
Right.
She's got energy.
Yes.
So, well, glad to be here. As you said, I'm one of the founding partners at CCK and founded this little organization back in 1997. Sort of retired, doing a bunch of other things.
A bunch of other things.
Some nonprofit work, some board of accountancy work. And so it's keeping me really busy.
I say John's living his best life right now.
Yes,
he always looks so good and so happy. So this is what happens after mostly retirement, right?
That's right. It's mostly retirement.
Yes.
But the reason John has a very special place in my heart, as do any of the founding partners, but John was the one who told me, how many years ago? 26 next week, because John's always the one that tells me about my anniversary.
Yeah.
John was the one who said, sometimes you got to get out of the boat.
That's right.
And he was the one that kind of...
Got to be the Peter.
He kicked me out.
Yes.
He kicked me out of the boat.
Yep.
And not only I, but so many of us in the firm have learned so much from John over the last several decades. And you are appreciated, and we're glad you're here. But we're really excited that you're here for a different reason. So let's get in and talk about the Accountancy Board and just, I don't know, we're going to throw the questions out and you all can fight over whoever wants to answer them. But just kind of give us a high-level overview of the Accountancy Board, what it is, why it's there, and how it got started.
I'm going to let Ashley talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to add
All right. I'll kick us off. All right. So the board has actually been around for decades and decades. We have board members that go all the way back to 1917. It was originally a 3-person board, and 2 of our founding board members were the AG and the state examiner and inspector, which is now the state auditor. So it's been around since 1917, and we currently have 5 CPAs and 2 non-CPAs on the board. And there's a 10 total of staff, and we regulate about 10,000 CPAs, about 1,000 candidates, and about 1,000 CPA and PA firms.
There's 10,000 CPAs in the state of Oklahoma.
There is 10,000.
Wow.
Yes.
That's pretty, I did not know that.
And they're all
Fun
young.
fact.
They're all very young, right?
Yes, very young.
The average age in Oklahoma is 25.
Yes, that's what I claim. Yes. Yes. And so we're a very active board. We are always interested in looking at ways to make an impact both in Oklahoma and nationally. We look to update our services we offer to our CPAs and candidates, and also ways that we can help other states. We traditionally will meet regularly with other states. We're very active in our national association, which I think John's probably going to talk about here. But we are just always looking for ways to get out there, and we enjoy working with the public.
So just as we get started here, because we've used the term board a couple times, and I know there is a board of the Accountancy Board of which John is a part of. So what's the difference when you say the board? Are you referring to the organization of the Accountancy Board or the board itself, or both, or what?
So it usually is both. So you have the board, which is the 7 members, and that's going to be, in essence, our governing body. So they're going to be the ones that set the strategic plan, who are able to kind of tell us the direction. They're going to be the ones that decide legislative proposals. They will do enforcement actions, things like that. It can also mean the staff. So like I said, there's 10 of us. We're the ones carrying out the day-to-day activities, the licensing, the helping people with questions, updating forms, et cetera, things like that. So it can really be both.
Okay.
Yeah. And Jeff, to your point, it's not, in my career, the board was just these people in a room making decisions about, enforcement or that sort of thing. There's so much more than that, because there is this wonderful staff. They're behind the scenes doing all the work and getting things to the board members so we can make decisions. But even in the board, we have subcommittees. We have committees in the board that are 2 and 3 people that are working with a staff person, and we're evaluating things and going through it so that we can bring it back to the full board. What I would tell you too is the full board, they're very efficient meetings because of the staff and because of the work that goes on behind the scenes. The other thing is the Accountancy Board is a state agency. Okay. So when we think about it, it's a board, its purpose, it's there to protect the public, to make sure that the regulations are followed by the CPAs. It's a platform for new CPA candidates to make sure they know what to do and taking the CPA exam and that sort of thing. But the regulatory side of it is one that was new to me. I spent most of my time with the Oklahoma Society, which is a volunteer organization, and the American Institute of CPAs, which is a volunteer professional organization. Very important, but this is the regulation. And so we talked about the staff and the board, but we have an assigned attorney from the Attorney General's office that comes to our meetings, that makes sure that, 1, we're doing things properly. Number 2, because we're dealing with regulations and state laws, we got to make sure that we're interpreting things correctly and regulating correctly. So there's this big engine behind just the board. I know, we're there to look good.
Well, and you're so at a very high level, you're not there to oversee the work that CPAs do, but you're there to oversee the CPAs and make sure they're following the rules and the statutes set up by the state, because every state's a little bit different, but you're making sure that we are operating at a higher level, so that we have the public trust. Right. Okay. Because at the end of the day, people see the 3 letters CPA and they need to be able to trust those. And so that's the service that the board provides.
Yes. Absolutely.
Well, John, you brought up about working with other state agencies and the AICPA. So let's just dig right in. So do all state accountancy boards work the same?
No. No.
Okay.
Who has the worst ones?
Right.
We only have tens of listeners. It's not thousands yet.
So, well, once we get this on our website,
our numbers will go through the roof.
It'll blow up. Yeah. So there's a couple points to that question, really. So let me kind of cover, and I think Ashley can weigh on this as well.
Okay.
So the Oklahoma Accountancy Board is a member of the National Association of Boards of Accountancy, commonly known as NASBA. Just like AICPA is, everything is acronyms, everything is abbreviations.
Just like CPA.
So we refer to NASBA, and that is our national organization of all of the accountancy boards. Okay. And there's, I think, 53 jurisdictions. So we have Guam and Puerto Rico,
Virgin
Islands,
U.S. Marine or something along those lines. I can't. There's some smaller ones, but
Okay. So it's anywhere in the U.S. and U.S. territories that have CPAs, and we'll talk probably a little bit about mobility and that sort of thing in a few minutes. But as it addresses your question, no, they're not all alike.
Okay.
They are. Each state has its own structure. Many of them are similar, but there's, Texas, it covers a much larger population, much larger area. And so they do things a little bit different because it's Texas.
Right.
Okay. But we are in the NASBA organization. We are in what's called the Southwest region.
Okay.
So that includes Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Louisiana, Arkansas, and that's it.
Good job.
Good job.
And I will tell you, it's the friendliest group of people because we have.
We're in the South.
We are, and
yes.
some I've been able to have some really good friends from those states that are also board members. Yeah. But even those boards are they operate differently.
Okay.
That we all have to deal with state statutes and state regulations.
So that's the similarity. Okay.
But how they're structured and that sort of thing are different. Ashley, you may be able to speak to that a little more.
Yeah, so Oklahoma is actually a little bit more unique in that we're not the only one, but we are a smaller subset and getting smaller we are an independent agency. So a lot of states have a subsumed board, a board inside of a larger conglomerate of an agency. It does change their interactions with the public. It changes what they do and what they don't. So that's going to be the biggest thing. What you're going to find is when you have an independent board like ours, they're usually more active in the community. They're more proactive in when changes happen. They are usually more involved in NASBA. Not always. So this is just kind of a generality.
Right.
They're very out there. And that's something that Oklahoma takes a lot of pride in, is getting out there and being involved in committees and having that voice. And part of that reason is because of our structure. And then, other states, sometimes they have to go through a deeper rules process or a statute change process that we don't have to go through. That gives us a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the committees at NASBA. So Oklahoma, in particular, Ashley and myself and Rusty Minix, who's one of our board members, are very active in really important committees at the NASBA level. So Ashley's on the UAA committee,
Uniform Accountancy Act.
Yes. Okay. Which is the model that all states use. I mean, that's kind of the rule book that we follow that Oklahoma has adopted. When that changes, which it just has, then we have to go through our legislative process. So I talk about all the people that make up this engine. There's the legislation and the governor's office, because these are laws that we draft them with the help of, attorneys, and then we present them and we get a sponsor at the legislative level and work that through the system. But so there's that side of the engine as well. I'm on a fun committee called IQAB. So that's fun to say.
That's a neat acronym.
IQAB, and it stands for international, of course. My background's international. International Qualifications Appraisal Board. And it's a joint committee between the AICPA and NASBA. And there's 3 members from NASBA and 3 members from AICPA. And we're charged. So we talk about mobility between the states in the United States. This is really about mobility internationally, where a chartered accountant that has their license and designation credential in South Africa, the ability for them to come and live and work in the United States and vice versa. And we want to make sure, the idea is we want to make sure that what they require of a chartered accountant is comparable to what we would require as a CPA.
So let's take just a step back and explain mobility, because we've talked about all the states are different and they have different statutes and not necessarily different, maybe some different requirements from a licensing perspective. But how does that, if Oklahoma is different than North Carolina, for example, can I just go and practice in North Carolina, or how does all that work? And you don't have to go from the very beginning and how it's changed, but kind of where does it sit today?
Yeah. Ashley, why don't you take that?
So mobility is actually undergoing some changes. So mobility is basically where you can go work in another state without being licensed. So it often gets confused with reciprocity, which is when you move to another state and usually must get licensed in that state. This is if you're not moving to that state. When you talk about mobility, that's what it's referencing. So prior to January of 2024, all of the states were considered something called substantially equivalent. So even though Texas's requirements might be a little bit different to be licensed than Oklahoma's or Arkansas's or North Carolina's, technically we all had mobility because they were considered to be substantially similar. That kind of goes back to the UAA and the Uniform Accountancy Act. That's kind of the baseline that most states used about whether or not people were substantially equivalent. That has been changing as this movement toward 120 plus 2 has been, or bachelor's plus 2, depending on the state, as they've been moving forward. And so that has changed. So we're seeing several different mobility models. Some of them are what you would call automatic mobility, which basically says a CPA is a CPA. It doesn't matter what state you're in or what state you're from, and what the licensure requirements in that state are. You're also seeing what they call automatic mobility with guardrails, which basically means a CPA is a CPA with a few caveats, and they vary across the states. So it could be pass the exam, it could be have a bachelor's degree, it could be depending on how many years of experience. So that has really caused an evolution in the mobility framework of the United States and the territories as of this time. And we're still kind of waiting to see how that all shakes out, basically. Yeah,
because I can remember when I started in the profession, and you talked about reciprocity and mobility, especially, you just didn't, it was about you actually went. And so I'm sure things have changed drastically over the last decade or two with just the mobility that we have from a working perspective.
Oh, yes, it has been especially extremely important given how so much work now is done remotely. You're not even going. I was a friend with an auditor. He's like, we used to go to Chicago all the time, but now we just do that from here. Right. So yes, that's definitely.
And then the committee you're working on, John, is more of the international side of that.
Right. And how that, and it probably impacts larger firms mostly because you got people in a large firm that may be assigned to go to Australia for a while and then come back. And so making sure that they're qualified under the Australian rules and vice versa. So it's just an added layer because you're thinking in another country, what are all their rules? Well, you can get pretty close, but they may have, like in the U.S., for example, if you're a CPA, you can be an auditor. You don't have to take a special test to be an auditor, unless you're a government auditor. But generally speaking, a CPA can audit. Now, they have to have competence and all that sort of thing. But in many countries, they require another level of exam if you're going to be an auditor. And the audit requirements in those countries are many times much more difficult and strenuous. So there's just, it's just kind of putting all those all this.
It's not something that's just done overnight.
No.
Well, I have one more question about NASBA before I turn it back over to Sara, who's leading this discussion. We have an episode where she actually in the middle of the episode said, "I thought you were going to let me do this," and so anyway.
Yes.
But as it relates to NASBA, and I hope my question makes sense. But so every state's a little bit different, and NASBA brings them all together. What, like from an AICPA perspective, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, what's the word I'm looking for, lobby on our behalf with Congress about tax law and things of that nature. And those are things that are uniform across the country. So the things that we do, the standards that we adhere to are uniform, whether it's financial reporting or tax. But with NASBA and the state boards, everybody's a little bit different. So what are you really coming together to do? Because you're not trying to come and make it entirely uniform, are you? Or what are those things that you're really trying to bring people together for?
Let me take it, and I know Ashley has some to add to this, but for example, the Uniform Accountancy Act is something that is a joint effort between AICPA and NASBA. And the idea is we're trying to create a model that states then can use and go adopt, okay, or adopt part of it. Mm-hmm. You know, states still have to evaluate that. So we still are coming together as a group at NASBA, and then also our counterparts at AICPA to create the model in the case of the UAA, but also do all the research and do all the, behind the scenes, figuring out what are the issues, how does this work? So we bring the feedback from the states, and then NASBA has a big staff as well, and they take that data and they analyze it and they make wonderful graphs that we have access to feed that back to the states and say, here's how your state fits into the rest of the country, let's say. So it is very much a meeting of the minds so that everybody has all the data that they need to work from. And then we can have things like mobility, and we can go across state lines. Let me interject one more thing just for your tens of thousands of listeners that aren't CPAs. It's not that much different from a lot of professions that, in our business, we have clients that are contractors. Well, what if they want to go over to Arkansas? Arkansas has certain, requirements for contractors and licenses, and the same with Kansas. And so you typically, when you find professions that are close in to their borders of another state, you have those sorts of issues come up. And a lot of that's really the same thing. We are different in that attorneys, for example, they have to go to another state and actually pass the bar exam, whereas this is part of it. We wanted to try to make the CPA exam uniform so that somebody could easily move around.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because that was the question I was going to ask or mention, is that if you're in another profession and there is a licensing oversight, it's not real easy. I mean, these are very complicated issues, and to try to get everybody at least somewhat on the same page is extremely difficult, whether you're an electrician or a plumber or a hairstylist or a CPA. Yeah.
I think the other thing that I think is important that we're sort of dealing with and trying to make the most of it is nationally, we are in an environment of trying to have less regulation. Okay, well, we're a regulator. Okay, so that directly impacts me. There are a few states, not Oklahoma yet, but there are a few states that would just like to get rid of all regulators, and make it sort of a free-for-all. And so one of the things that we're working with the legislature and the governor and that sort of thing is making it really clear, where the need is, why we want to protect the public with respect to accounting, financial matters, people's money. Ashley can talk about some enforcement actions where people didn't do what they were supposed to do. Yeah. But at the same time, I get one of the goals, at least of our governor, is to make job access easier. If somebody has to get a license to be able to have a job, let's make that as not easy in terms of making it so that they just get it, but so there's not so much bureaucracy and paperwork. And I would say that is one of the things that Ashley and her team are doing a really good job of helping our CPA candidates move through the process, making it easy. Ashley's going to universities all over the state, talking to the students, saying, what questions do you have? That's what we're here for. And so there's this balance between overregulation and regulation for a reason.
Man, he went down two different paths, and I could go
well, go girl.
Okay, Jeff, you pick.
And I sounded so serious there, and I didn't mean to.
The only thing I will throw in here is if when you go and you talk to these students about becoming CPAs,
we're gonna go down pipeline.
Okay.
Let's do it.
If you need a resource, we have a really good episode number 2 where we talk about how that's changed from my time to our latest CPA candidate. So, all right,
let's go down. Well, let's just go down the pipeline in education. So, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on that current CPA shortage? I hear it in the news all of the time. Nobody wants to get their CPA anymore because it is so hard to sit for an exam, fill out all the paperwork, take so many college credits. So what are you guys' thoughts on that shortage? Or are you even seeing a shortage? Is the media lying?
Have you already solved
it? The lies of the media?
Yeah, we've solved it.
Well, we're not going political. We're not going political there, Sarah.
Yeah. So one of my favorite stories about the pipeline issue is I was a brand new executive director. I went to my first NASBA meeting and I'm told, these are great. They're calm. It proceeded to be yelling with people having to apologize to each other afterwards. I would like to say that's not the case anymore. NASA works great together, but that was my first introduction to the pipeline question.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And so it has been going on pretty much.
So accountants can rumble. Then.
Yes, accountants
we can trigger people.
Right?
Yes. So that's been something that has obviously been being discussed for the past several years. It's, a concern. It's one of the reasons that Oklahoma decided to go to 120 to sit back in 2023 was an attempt to deal with that. You've seen other things happen to try to address that. The 30 months to sit, it was 18 months to sit and pass all 4 sections. Now it's 30. So you have seen things like that happen. In Oklahoma, our numbers have largely stayed steady.
Oh, good.
And we have, obviously more and more. So our average age, about 55% of our population is 50 or older in Oklahoma of our CPAs.
Frable.
Yes. And so that has been, but that's something that we have continually looked at. We're currently reaching out to colleges and universities, talking about that, making sure we're not having too much regulation, getting the right balance while protecting the public, asking about accounting and business hours and things like that. It's all going on. So we're having that discussion at the board along with the rest of the country. And I don't know if, John, you have anything you want to.
Well, my additional comment brings in a number of other things because there's a lot of things that impact this issue. One is that generally, when you look at the statistics, there are more CPAs retiring or almost retiring, in my case, than there are new students coming into the program. Okay. And it's not just the CPA profession, it's most professions. So it's kind of across the board. So that's one level. The other is that the CPA exam and the 5-year program has been, everybody's kind of throwing that out. That's a big barrier. But it's a barrier if you make it one from the standpoint of it does cost more to take one more year of college.
Right.
Okay. But I know firms that are out there that they'll hire somebody that's not even finished with their 4-year degree, bring them on, teach them how to do tax or accounting or whatever, and let them work on their studies as they go. So there's some ways around that to make it better and not make it a complete hurdle, but it does exist.
Yeah.
I think from a CPA firm standpoint, we're in an environment where there's so many, it's not just tax and audit, right? There's accounting, there's valuation, there's what else is there? Fraud, forensic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole bunch of fun stuff. There really is. And CPAs are trained, with the fundamentals to be able to do all that. But then one of the things we've changed recently as a profession is we've changed the exam to be more specific to certain areas. If you want to go into tax, then you take that tax section, and they have a name, and I'm sorry, I don't know what they are, but it's
TCP is the tax.
TCP,
It's the tax
acronym.
payment, yes.
Yeah. But so again, let's focus on where the interest is. But I know, and you guys know that over the years, we've had people that, they tried this and they tried that. And, somebody I know wanted to be a lawyer. And
Not me.
Sara is. And, but I think one of the things that's really critical for us, and I think this has gone on, I know you guys do it here. One, make it fun. Mm-hmm. Figure out what people like to do. Let them do that. Mm-hmm. If somebody wants to just be a spreadsheet person, we can let them do that.
Right.
If they want to be a people person, and we have some of those, that let them do that. So I think it's, to me, one of the things that the CPA profession can maybe do a better job of is promoting. CPAs are not boring. They're not green eye shades and stuff like that. I mean, right. they have podcasts.
They do. That's right.
And it can be a fun profession. It can be also a very rewarding profession, and it was and has been for me. So anyhow, I kind of got off. The other thing that affects this on the pipeline is a whole new topic, and we call them alternative practice structures, okay? Also known as private equity and ESOPs, okay? And this is an issue that is just blaring us in the face right now. Mm-hmm. And that is that you read, every time you turn around, there's another private equity group that has bought a large accounting firm. Mm-hmm. National and international.
Right.
And so that's what's been happening. There are firms that have said, hey, we're going to form an ESOP and have the employees. ESOPs are great. We've used ESOPs forever. An employee stock ownership plan, for those that don't know what that is. And they're a great tool to allow employees to be owners.
Right.
And I think it's a great thing. Our challenge with that, among many things, is, are the rules being followed? Is independence impaired? Okay.
Right.
Do the private equity players, the people that are investing, are they following the same rules as owners now? Are they following the same rules as CPAs, as the code of conduct that the AICPA has? All those questions. And we're taking that very seriously. I would tell you that Ashley and the board are one of the very few states that have really taken it seriously. Mm-hmm. And so we talk about NASBA and we talk about committees. Oklahoma, being a small state, has a tremendous amount of influence at a national level. What was the buzzword you said? Loud and...
Oh, we are loud and proud. Yes, we are.
That's our...
We have opinions, and we will tell you.
And so
awesome.
For our 10 Oklahoma listeners, I think it's important for them to know that they're being well represented at a national level, and we've got some things going on. So...
Well, with that, I mean, just going back to our pipeline and things like that, and changing, you were talking about because as a CPA who has already passed, I don't pay much attention to how the standards have changed. But so is that something that can be grandfathered in for a professional that has been working in accounting and didn't have the hours, may have 120, but didn't have the 150 credit hours that were before? Are they grandfathered into that, even they have graduated from college years ago?
So how we have it in Oklahoma, so just talking about becoming a CPA in Oklahoma, if you is kind of a little funky.
Yeah.
So let's say that you graduated from college in 1985. And we do have these situations. They apply to sit for the CPA exam, and they have maintained their active candidacy that entire time.
Wow.
At that point, there are some trigger points in regards to it changes your requirements, but those very rare. But let's say if you're talking about like mobility, like let's say we go from 150 to 120 and you're already licensed, like that won't impact you.
Right. Okay.
Like for example, when we went from 120 hours to 150 back in 2010, I believe, July 1st, 2010, I think is when we went live with that. Everyone who was licensed already maintained their license.
Correct.
Everyone was grandfathered in. So those types of, if we change the number of accounting hours, if we change the number of business hours, if we change the number of experience, if you're already licensed, you're going to be fine. Right. The only people it's going to impact are going to be usually those people that are still candidates.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the thing I'd like to bring up here, just to expand the nature of what we're saying, is that if you are an entrepreneurial business owner and you have a CPA, that person did not just decide one day to be a CPA and do this work. There is a ton of oversight, licensing requirements that, in fact, that change often, not only locally and regionally, but also nationally. And so it's a very structured process to go through. And again, we go back to, like John said earlier, that's all done to protect the public because they put trust in those three letters, and that needs to be overseen.
Yep. Right.
Absolutely.
Well, and then, I mean, too, I'm going to go back to your comment, John, because it was really, really good about it's not just tax and it's not just audit. There's such cool things out there that we need our tens of listeners to know that there's so much involved in public accounting that it just doesn't cover tax and other things. And I'm just having conversations with my oldest daughter who's going into accounting. She's like, Mom, I don't want to be a tax accountant. I said, sis, you can do forensics. And she's even delved in that in her current profession. She's at a bank and working in the forensics department there. So yes, I just want to stress it's not just tax. Yeah. There's fun stuff.
Oh,
tax is fun, but
tax is really fun.
And let me change that question just a little bit differently, Sara. With AI and everything, will CPAs just go away? Because for years and years and years, the question was, well, if we get a flat tax, well, we need CPAs, and we've seen the stuff that comes in the office from our clients and how things get kind of messed up. But I've even heard it, recently. Well, if with what AI will be able to do tax returns in X number of years, will we still need CPAs?
Not to do tax returns. Yeah.
Well, define what you mean by not to do tax returns, John, because there's a difference.
To do tax, so most people think of when you do a tax return, you take information that the client gives you and you put it on a form and send it to the government.
Right.
And that's preparing a tax return. There's a reason why CCK Strategies is called CCK Strategies. And it is about, not just preparing tax returns. It's what's the strategy behind it? What's the business? What's underlying all that? And so I'm always reminded of the now retired former CEO of the AICPA, Barry Melanson. Barry wrote an article one time that just really, it was probably 20 years ago now, but it had to do with this very topic, and that was CPAs need to become more strategic advisors because we're going to have AI. Well, 20 years ago, that wasn't the case, but we're going to have technology. Technology is going to change things, and technology has changed my whole career and continues to do so. So just like, I have a PC on my desk now that has a 10 megabyte disk in it in 1982. And so why do you need a CPA, right? Well, guess what? CPAs are going to be around a while. CPAs have to change what they're doing. They have to do forensic stuff. They have to do, auditors are, there's this thing that nobody likes the auditors. Well, auditors come in and, they always question you. Well, that's their job.
Right.
At the same time, a good auditor is going to say, hey, why don't you try doing this differently and make it better? And so they're trying to be not an advocate per se, but helpful. And I think that's the thing that CPAs have going for us. It's a breadth of knowledge and understanding, protecting the public, and in financial literacy. I could throw in junior achievement, which is I'm very active with, and the financial literacy, entrepreneurship that goes along with that. We're trying to teach these kids from first grade about this stuff, and it carries on through into a career. So don't
even get me started.
Don't let me get started on that.
Our clients have enough problems with QuickBooks.
Right. There's one last comment this is one of my comments that I was going to make about the whole alternative practice / private equity thing that's happening. Is one of the things we're seeing is private equity firms telling their employees that they might be working for the private equity firm, but being rented over to the audit firm. They said they're not allowing them, some of them are not allowing them to put CPA in their email signature line. Said, you can't put your CPA because we can't hold ourselves out as a CPA firm. So there's rules that have to be followed. And so their gut instinct, well, just don't call yourself a CPA. Well, what's that do to the profession? Right. If we can't call ourselves CPAs, then
we worked hard for that.
We did. And so those are, and I say that because those are the types of issues that we are in the middle of dealing with.
And it's funny how that's changed over the years, because 20 years ago, the fight was against the public accountants. And now it's changed. It's still kind of the same concept, because you want to be able to stand apart and have that trust. Right. But it's just shifted a little bit.
All right, let's get into the nitty gritty, into ethics. Okay,
so ethics.
Yes. Okay, so we, as a profession, CPAs, we try and uphold ourselves to the utmost, and we think we're perfect, but we're not. And there are some CPAs that do make some intentional, but some unintentional decisions that impact our profession and that come to you guys as the board. So how do you guys handle any complaints, or how do you enforce our standards too?
So the good news is all CPAs and firms get due process. I always like to start with that, because I have talked to some CPAs and they kind of view it as like, you're going to show up one day and say, give me that certificate off your wall, you're done. And I promise you it's not like that. But yes, we take the responsibility to enforce our rules and our code of conduct very seriously, because it does help the profession keep that trusted advisor position, which is so important. So the normally will happen is if we have a complaint come in, the CPA or if it's against a firm, the CPA firm will have the ability to basically respond. And then we have an enforcement committee, which John is the chair of this year. Lucky him. And so that enforcement committee looks at all of the details. If we need to assign an investigator, we do that. We actually contract with several specialists. So we want to make sure if we're going to take someone for disciplinary action, we want to make sure that there was an actual violation, and we will investigate it. And then usually we will make what we call an ACO, or administrative consent order, which is an offer of disciplinary action. And that CPA has the right to basically say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't. I would like A, B, and C to stay the same, but D to be removed. And then it can go back and forth with the board. And in the end, if we can't come to an agreement, they have the right to have a hearing in front of the full board and fully state their case and bring an attorney if they want. But we really do that. What we'd like I always tell people is, but usually by the time you make it to the enforcement committee, you've either really, really messed up. We usually try to give people a few chances before they get there. So we still get people on a regular basis who call us and say, I'm 3 hours short on my CPE. Am I going to get revoked? So In this one, I want to say no. The answer is no. You will not be revoked for being 3 hours short of CPE.
But you do post the list. I haven't seen
Yes,
it.
we do. You'll get fined, but you won't be
we
revoked.
shame them.
Right. Yes, we do. We shame them. We're like, oh, that person's on the list.
Yes,
No, we
do.
see.
And
we
yes,
see.
and that is part of the enforcement that we do
Right.
actually post them. So because part of protecting the public is warning the public. But yes, so it is very much that type of everyone gets their chance to say something, to talk about it and present their case. And we do our best to make it as fair as possible.
Do you, I mean, I know you take every complaint seriously, but how do you filter through somebody who's just upset with their CPA because they told them they owed $1 bajillion versus somebody who really has made an ethical issue or made a decision that is unethical, I guess.
Unethical,
Yes,
yeah.
thank you. Unethical.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we actually deal with that quite a bit. People who are upset because, either they said something wrong or they end up owing more on taxes than they expected. And so that is where hearing from the CPA themselves is so vital, because what we find 9 times out of 10, if not higher than that, is they're able to explain, well, this person, I was unable to help them because they didn't give me all the information, or basically they sent it to me, 6 weeks after I asked them to. And so that's kind of where that is. And if it's, like I said, if it is, we're really unsure, that's when we get someone who's specialized in that type of tax. So for example, if we have a case that is over a certain type of business combination, or one time we had someone who had a marijuana operation, we'll go out and find someone specific so that we know we can pinpoint whether or not there was an actual issue.
Okay. All right. So every complaint that is made but the CPA is made aware of every complaint.
Correct.
And is the firm they're associated with also made aware? So if I get a complaint, is CCK notified?
So if it is to a specific individual, we notify that specific individual. And if they want to let their firm know, they can, because it's considered confidential. So if they made the complaint specifically against that CPA, we can't go out. We're not allowed to tell anybody else except that CPA.
I see.
Now, if it's against a firm specifically, then obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And is that still confidential too for the firm, or is there?
Oh, yes. It's everything. So what we send to the firm or the person, what they send back, all of the documents we ask, all of that is confidential. The only time anything becomes not confidential is if it goes to hearing. There are certain things that become public record, but it is very siloed. It's even siloed from the only board members who see those complaints are the 2 people on the enforcement committee. So none of the other board members know the complaint exists or anything about it.
And I'm glad you brought that question up, Sarah, because the way I wanted to kind of ask it was, I've always kind of heard that as far as complaints are concerned, it's maybe not rare that it's a performance or an interpretation of the code or the standard issue. It's usually more of interaction and not returning calls and that kind of thing. So that's what you're saying is, yeah, these other things do happen that you do have to take it to the next level and maybe bring in some other experts. But a lot of the times it's just the way we interact with our clients.
Yes. So I would say 70 to 80% is what I would call behavioral, where it is my CPA won't call me back. My CPA was very delayed on the work. Now, whether or not their expectations were appropriate, that's why the response is so important.
Right.
Things like, I thought that I was going to get this tax break and I didn't. So yes, communication is so key. In fact, I took a call on the way up here from an individual who put in ChatGPT, my CPA won't call me back. Who do I call? I'm in Oklahoma, and it returned our number.
Wow.
And so, so I told them, I said, yes, we can help with that. And so because part of what we do is protecting the public and serving the public. And 9 times out of 10, we just call the CPA and say, hey, would you mind giving them a call back? The CPA says, sure. And the CPA never hears from us again, and everything is well. Nice. But yes, that's a huge chunk of what we do.
Good old ChatGPT.
Yes. I'm glad it's returning.
Yeah, right? Yes.
And I might point out, it's not the chair of the enforcement committee that's going, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
It is a nice voice on the end that says, oh, by the way, you need to take care of this. And it's a very friendly, the other side of that coin, so if you happen to have looked at your OAB bulletin for this last month,
I
happen to have a copy of it.
I look at the enforcements just to see who's on the list.
I know.
Yeah.
Every once in a while we have a fun one.
Yeah, every once in a while.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. So we have a page full in the last. I printed this off.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I killed a tree here with paper, but it's CPE, on and on and on. Every once in a while, we get an SEC referral. So typically a large firm that does SEC work, and the SEC has determined that they have a failure, and we get those, and we ask the question: was anybody from Oklahoma involved in this? And they say yes or no. If it was yes, then we move forward with determining whether there's a case against those people. But or an ERISA audit if it's substandard work. So
What's ERISA?
ERISA. Oh,
I don't know what I seriously don't know what ERISA is.
My sister ERISA.
My sister Arissa.
ERISA is that federal organization that governs retirement plans.
Yes.
Employee
Okay. All right.
retirement, something.
Kind of like the IRS, but a lot of times worse.
Yeah, longer. Yeah. So all your 401k plans are audited under ERISA requirements.
Okay.
Yes. And then this was one that kind of on the topic we were talking about. This CPA violated the act by failing to timely complete work for their client and responding to the client and failing to cooperate with the our board's investigation.
Oh, wow.
They pretty much just ignored everything. And so they were fined and, all that kind of stuff. So anyhow, it's really all over the place. The predominant one that we see a lot of is somebody didn't get their 3 hours or their ethics or something.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to do some things even on the front end of that. We're working with the Oklahoma Society, who provides lots of CPE, right? So we're trying to make it easier for people not only to do the CPE, but to report the CPE, to make sure they're in compliance and they don't get a nasty letter, or they don't get nasty letters. They get letters. So.
Well, I always, I joke, but I do always read that and most of it's just to see what's being done. Yeah. And 90% of it is CPA. I remember decades ago, there was a CPA that actually committed murder or something that. Yeah. And that popped up in there that they lost their license because it was an act discreditable to the profession. But that's once in 20 years type of thing. But it's always, but I think the key there is you can miss your CPE goal or your certified continuing professional education, which we're required to have every year. And you don't lose your license, because if that happened to me, I probably wouldn't take the test again, and I'd probably just say I'm done. But
okay, good. I'm actually glad you said that.
Okay.
There's actually talking about trying to keep up with, the world and the profession. So now in Oklahoma, you only have to retake the test if you were revoked for cause.
Okay.
So, but you will not have to.
The other thing that I found out recently is that it used to be that if you couldn't renew your license, and this is profession wide, not just CPAs, but if your Oklahoma taxes were not up to date, your license could not get renewed. But that's changed, hasn't it?
Correct.
Recently?
That changed. I think it was November of I don't know if it's 2023 or 2024. It's relatively recent. So used to, we actually had in our system, we would send a file to the Oakland Tax Commission twice a year, and they would basically say, here are the people that can't renew.
Right.
And they would call us, and we'd basically have to say, we're really sorry, you have to call the tax commission. It was very pleasant for them, unpleasant for us, obviously. And they actually updated the law to now where, better or worse, now they garnish your wages.
Okay.
So it depends on what your opinion is about whether you think that's better or worse. But no, thankfully that did go away. And, as a CPA, I was glad. I was like, I have a dispute. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Well, okay, before we wrap up,
I
let you wrap up, I do have a question. So not that it is very similar. So I've been rewatching Better Call Saul.
We get very technical on this podcast.
Yes. And so, not getting into, I don't want to get into like the cartel and all of that stuff. But I mean, there are some, there's some ethical issues there. And is there ever any point where something is presented to the board as a complaint and then you guys find out where there's some federal charges or state charges that need to be pressed? Do you guys turn that over? Or, have you ever gone that far to where it turns into like you got to go to jail?
So thankfully we don't have criminal power.
Okay.
Thankfully. So
good to know.
We can refer to like the district attorney.
Okay.
It's extremely rare. My enforcement coordinator has been with the agency 15 years and she's only ever had to do it once, thankfully.
Wow.
But technically, yes.
Okay.
But very rare.
Okay. Good to know.
Because CPAs can be bad people too, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and like I said before, we work very closely with the Attorney General's office in everything we're doing. And so if they see something, that they're probably going to kind of alert us and say, we need to take over on this particular issue. But again, I haven't really seen that.
It's extreme. Like I said, one time in 15 years, very rare. Usually it's not us finding stuff.
It's the way around.
Telling us.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is good because that sounds dangerous and we have our door unlocked. Florida, they revoked a gentleman who assisted with a political overthrow a few years ago.
Oh, wow.
So it does happen. Yeah, I asked if they had extra security when they did that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Interesting. All right. There, I got my.
Well, Sarah, I want to. I got one more thing to say.
Okay.
And
some things that
Claire's probably turning me off right now. So. No, you're talking about ethics, and that was a big part of my career. I spent decades, literally, on the Oklahoma Society's ethics committee. I spent some time on the AICPA Technical Standards Committee. And it was a great education for me because I got to see a lot of things.
Yeah.
Some good, some kind of sad. But I think what I've discovered in all that time, and we see some of these things come through, but it is the fix for ethics usually is having a firm culture that says ethics is important.
Yes.
Cheating is not allowed.
Right.
Cheating on your time. Over the years, we've had to deal with, and that could be somebody working without putting their time down.
Yeah.
That could be putting extra time down. And that doesn't happen a lot, but we've all seen that in our industry, in our profession. And I use the word cheating kind of intentionally because it gets the point across. But all of that is, if you do those little things, then what it does, it ruins your credibility for everything else you do. Mm-hmm. And so if I am doing work as an auditor, and I say as an auditor, as a junior auditor, I say, I looked at those documents, and I'm signing off that I looked at those documents, and I really didn't, but my supervisor assumes that I did because I said so. Okay. Well, the credibility of the entire project is in question. Mm-hmm. And so that's the kind of thing, and that's an ethical issue.
Right.
And so that has to be taught, and that is taught from leaders, right?
Right.
It's a top-down thing. And I know you guys have stressed that. You were taught well. That's all I can say.
We were taught well.
No, but seriously, that's what, to me, the whole ethics thing comes down to. What's the culture that you're creating? And even in a firm of 3 people or a firm of 1 person, what we've tried to do is create, by doing some things at both the board level, at the OSCPA level, trying to encourage people, say, this is important. This is why we have ethics classes.
Yeah.
And try to do that.
And there's a requirement for it.
Yeah. So that's my pitch. Thank you.
Well, it all goes back to protecting the public, putting trust in the 3 letters. So, Ashley, John, thank you so much for joining us today. Yes. Ashley, you drove all the way from Oklahoma City, so thank you for that. And John, it's always good to have you within the 4 walls that you created. So, we talked about a lot of really great stuff, and I hope for those of our listeners that are not in the industry, it was beneficial. But I think it gives a lot of insight to what goes on behind the scenes of a licensing oversight board, whether it's CPAs or any other trade or things like that. And also if you're getting into the profession, I think it gives a lot of really good information about how our licenses is administered and how it's governed and all that kind of stuff. But before we end, and I don't know if you've heard this, because if you've listened to our podcast, you have.
Would, yes.
Yeah. But Sara has some special questions. Is it just going to be for Ashley or is it going to be for John?
It's going to be for both.
Okay.
Yes.
Now this is a little fun just to kind of, so don't get all worried.
And I did not give these to you. But this is our rapid fire. All right. To start your day, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Hot chocolate.
Oh,
There we
nice.
go.
I love
Yeah.
that. Love it. Okay. Besides your email app, what is your most used app on your phone?
LinkedIn.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right.
Teams.
Teams? Yep. Good. All right. If you're going to binge on something, are you going to binge on reading books or watching shows, TV shows?
Reading.
I was like, sorry, my millennial show and TV shows.
Nice. Good. Same, sister. All right. If you weren't in the accounting profession, what would you be doing?
Oh, tour guide.
That was a quick answer.
That was quick. Yes. Tour guides. Okay. Got to be a little bit more specific.
Like travel tour
Travel
guide.
tour
Oh,
guide?
yeah.
Okay.
I'm the family vacation planner.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. All right.
That is tough.
I know you already are in the jack of all trades, John.
I would be a jack of all trades.
Yes.
I would be, a chairman of some board.
Nice. Okay.
Like
A big
5
board.
of them right now.
Right? Oh, you're already doing that. You're
Yeah,
living
no.
your best semi-retired life, right? All right. Last one. This one's a little, you got to probably think a little bit and get in your feels. Best career advice you have ever received.
That's easy
Okay.
for me because it was the first career advice I ever received. And I was getting ready to go to, I was probably in college, and this came from my dad. And he said, and he was a professional petroleum engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And his comment to me, he says, I don't care what you do, just whatever you do, be the best, go for the top, and don't just settle.
Nice.
So that was pretty simple.
So I think mine probably came from my dad. He said, always say yes to lunch.
Hey,
It's how
That's
you meet
good.
people, and you learn from people that you meet,
yep.
and it expands your horizons, and you'll be surprised where you end up.
That's
if you
right.
listen to other people and learn from them.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's a good advice.
It is good
All
advice.
right.
Can I tell a quick story on Ashley?
Absolutely.
Well, Ashley and I hadn't known each other very long, but we were at a NASBA conference. And at the NASBA conference, they do these presentations, and they have a microphone, much like these, out in the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
And
So like for a Q&A?
for Q&A.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
And up pops Ashley. She's the only one in the whole room of several hundred people. And she asks a great question, whatever it was. And then later, I'm sitting next to her, and I could tell she was just really wanting to get up there. And I said, Ashley, go get up there and ask the question. I said, oh, no, I don't want to. No, you need to. And so ever since then, I have encouraged her, and she now has a reputation in all of NASBA. She's the question lady, and she asks smart questions, and we are just so blessed to have her part of our Oklahoma board. So.
Ashley, then you're my kindred spirit because I'm the question asker in the firm here. Yeah. So just putting that
I'm
out
sorry,
there.
but when I think about asking questions at a presentation, I think of Dwight when he on The Office when he got up to ask the softball question.
Yeah.
Yes, Thunder.
Well, that's really cool because when you
Yes.
get up, everyone goes, "Oh no, here comes that lady
sure.
from
Sometimes
Oklahoma."
they
Well,
probably
kinda.
do.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's nice to have a good reputation like that, right?
Yes, always have something to ask.
Well, like I said, we have influence, so it's fun to be part
And
of
we are all about having influential people on this podcast. So
100.
thank you for keeping up that tradition. If you are listening today and you have any questions or comments or want to give Sara some new rapid fire questions, you can always email us at podcast@cckcpa. That's podcast@cckcpa.com. We would love for you to comment, like, share, all that kind of fun stuff with this podcast. We want more listeners and we want to expand our message. So help us do that. Special thanks, as always, to CCK Strategies for being our sponsor, allowing us to do this fun stuff. Thank you, John, for being almost 28 years ago, coming up on our anniversary. So thank you for that. KP, thank you as always. She's not here today, but she keeps us on the straight and narrow. Robert, for the intro and outro music. Did we get new music yet?
No, he has some. I need to get it to you.
Get it to Clarence, which we want.
Well, you have to approve it.
Oh, if it's good with Robert, it's good with me. So, and Clarence Fisher, Tulsa Internet Marketing Services, thank you so much, and Natalie Renfro and Emily Johansson on our team to get us across the finish line every week. Again, we're glad you joined us. We look forward to you joining us next time when these two CPAs get together to have a chat, and you get to find out who's on the mic.
The information provided on this podcast is for general informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute accounting, tax, legal, or financial advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, laws and regulations change and individual circumstances vary. Always consult with a qualified CPA or professional advisor before making any financial or business decisions. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any organizations they are affiliated with. Listening to this podcast does not create a client-accountant relationship. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree to those terms. And that's a wrap for this episode of Two CPAs and the Mic. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Have questions or ideas for a topic? Reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcast@cckcpa.com.